Of course, the Basic Education Minister delivered her briefing a little earlier on as to how her department is dealing with the COVID-19. To get more reaction, we are joined by teacher and education activist Hendrick Makatena. A very good afternoon to you, Hendrick, and thank you so much for your time. So many things came out of Angie Motshekga's briefing earlier on today. The most concerning, I would imagine, for many is that 50 to 75% of the academic school year in 2020 was lost. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, indeed. This is exactly what has happened. We've always had a concern. You will recall that last year already in the second term of the year, learners were at home, nothing was done academically. Particularly learners who come from disadvantaged communities, those are learners in townships, as well as some of the poor rural communities. These are learners who were not able to attend classes because they do not have access to gadgets, they don't have access to connectivity. Hence, they fell behind, and this is something that we've raised on many occasions with the department. And I think that it is a good thing that Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has now decided to do something about it to make sure that learners are able to cover the ground that they've already lost. But not only last year, also this year, you'll recall that when classes started, we had what is called the rotational timetable, which the majority of learners are still following, particularly in high schools and some of the primary schools. And that too has ensured that learners further fall behind, in addition to the work that they have not done previously. Also in 2021, learners are behind.
Mr. Makatena, you raise an important point there to say that, what happened last year with the loss of the academic calendar is not something that was new to the education department, because activists such as yourself have raised that more needs to be done to ensure that our scholars, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds, are perhaps maybe not to the level of the private education, but at least are not as far behind as they are now. So you're basically saying that the experience of the 50 to 75% loss of, schooling last year could have actually been avoided. Maybe it wouldn't have been 50%. It could have been something like 30, 25%.
Yeah, indeed. I must indicate that, the COVID-19 caught government unprepared. This is exacerbated by the actual challenges that are faced, challenges of poor infrastructure in townships as well as in poor communities, where you find that even overcrowding was one of the challenges that the department has faced over a number of years. And when COVID-19 hit the country, obviously it made things worse, because at some point we had to comply with the social distancing, the protocols as stated by the National Command Council, and of course that has exposed the gaps that exist between private schools as well as public schools. And I think that in as much as the government has decided to embark upon the problem with a view to address it, it will obviously take a number of years before public schools can fall on the same level with private schools. Remember, during level 5 of the lockdown, most of the private schools in the country were able to carry on with learning and teaching, primarily because most of them have got access, as I said, to connectivity. They could carry on with online learning and teaching, whereas it is not the case with our schools. And now that we want to also deal with the issue of a rotational timetable, the issue of falling back with the curriculum will continue to be with us. As you know that some of the schools will still experience problems of overcrowding. I mean, if we are returned to a full capacity, because currently, we are sitting with a rotational timetable, which is also making things worse, because by the time learners return back to the classroom, some of them or most of them have forgotten what was taught in the previous lesson. And I think that this is something that government must thoroughly look at, the question of infrastructure. But we want to reiterate once again that we don't think that government alone may be able to resolve this big challenge that we are sitting with, the challenge of poor infrastructure in townships. I think that the private sector must also come on board and make an addition so that this whole issue of infrastructural problems can be resolved once and for all.
Hendrick Makatena, one of the other things that the minister brought up was the matter of teenage pregnancy in schools. Now, you know, a 15-year-old, I mean, there are obviously stats coming out that girls between the ages of 10, you know, to 16 are pregnant in schools. I would not imagine that a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old is making that decision, you know, of their own free will, that they're going to bear a child, that they even, you know, are going to engage in sexual intercourse. So essentially that brings us to the matter of 10, 11, 12, even 16-year-olds are being preyed on, you know, and now the minister is saying that perhaps they will reintroduce the sexual education program. But then that, in some way, puts the responsibility on the young girls to protect themselves. Should the education or, you know, the clamping down not be happening on those preying on the children?
Yes, indeed. I think that the time has come for us to broadly embrace the whole issue of sex education so that, you know, young people may be trained thoroughly. We know that it's not for the first time that the issue of sex education will be tackled, but I think that it must be done in a large scale because the fact that we have such a high number of girl learners who fall pregnant within the terrain of education is a cause for great concern. And I think that the departments must also go a little bit further to crack the whip on some of the teachers who may be preying on young girls at school level by ensuring that the South African Council for Educators is able to be strengthened. You know, we have had many cases in the past where you found that some of the teachers got away with this act of criminality. And I think that government must be able to move with the necessary speed to work with the South African Council of Educators to ensure that they bring to book all the teachers who take the decision to impregnate or you know, to have an affair with school learners. And I think this is something that is not, it's an issue that, you know, has not been dealt with thoroughly. Teachers, of course, have got the duty of care. It is stated that in the absence of parents at school level, teachers are the parents, they automatically becomes parents, and they have a duty to look after learners, both girls and boys. And currently we're still sitting with a problem of situations where you find that some of the teachers are caught in the wrong act. And let me tell you that this also happens with teachers who may want to be in a relationship with a girl learner who also come from a different province. And I think that we need to call upon teachers to say, it does not really matter where the girl learner is studying, whether the girl learner is studying from a faraway province or whether teachers meet some of these girls during weekends, be it in a pub or anywhere. Teachers remain teachers even during school holidays, even during weekends, and they have a duty to ensure that learners are safe at all times.
Mr. Makatena, thank you so much for joining us on Upfront here on ENCA this afternoon. That is Hendrick Makatena, who is a teacher and education activist.